Addison.
And I'm Ethan.
We've been together for about
5 years.
And married
for 3 years.
I use they, them pronouns. Being non-binary just means that I just don't identify with the gender I was assigned at birth, and I don't identify exclusively with being a man or a woman. I'm something in between, outside of that binary.
My pronouns are he or they. I also identify as a non-binary. To me, being a non-binary means having the sense of freedom to explore my gender in whichever way I want. I don't have to perform or pretend to be someone that I'm not. I can be my authentic self.
It's really important for us to share more information with people because people are curious, they want to understand, but sometimes they don't always have the opportunities to do that.
This is a hot topic.
Yes.
That's a good thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Why is it a good thing?
I guess because it creates dialogue and it invites conversation to learn about other people.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are really confused about gender identity in these times, and it's good for us to have these conversations so people open their minds and relearn and unlearn to what we've been taught.
Right. And Addison, many people think gender pronouns are exclusive to the LGBTQ plus community, but that's a misconception, true?
Yeah. Well, everybody has pronouns. Like, you may use he and him as your pronouns, right? I use they and them as my pronouns. We all may have a certain gender pronoun too, but I think it's important for people to understand that for trans and non-binary people, we often change our pronouns to reflect who we are when we come out and be who we are.
How do you explain the difference between sex and gender?
I consider sex to be our biological makeup. Our chromosomes or hormones, our genitals is a biological makeup. But our gender is more of an internal sense. So think of it like this. Sex is what's between the legs, and gender is what's between the ears, right? It's how we see ourselves on the inside.
Okay. And that's something somebody can't know. Gender is something somebody can't know just by looking at somebody.
Nope, yeah. Because everyone is going to present and express themselves in a different way. I know, it's very confusing, right? Everyone's like, what is going on? But it's really, about us breaking that assumption that we can tell someone's identity, someone's story, their pronouns, even their name, just based on how they look, right?
Yeah. And so how does someone ask? How does somebody clarify that? Ethan, what's the best way? What's the most comfortable way?
I think for me, to create a safe space for people to share their pronouns, I will say, hi, my name is Ethan. I use he or they pronouns. What about you?
I think it's really important for us to recognize other people's pronouns because, again, we can't make that assumption, but for so many people who are cisgender, meaning that you do identify with the gender that you were assigned at birth, you're not transgender or not non-binary, I think a lot of people don't even question their pronouns because we already use them and it's already assumed correctly. But for so many trans and non-binary people, that isn't often assumed correctly. So we need to take the time to get to know people.
Cisgender, it says adjective that describes a person whose gender identity matches or aligns with the gender he or she was assigned at birth. Now, this would be what has been traditional for centuries, right? Why does it need a term?
If we don't use that term, then we end up saying maybe real men or normal men or regular men, right? Or we just say men, and then we say maybe transgender men, right? And the thing is that we need to realize that trans women are women, trans men are men too. And so we just want to have a term for that privilege, that assumption that your gender identity is going to match the one that you were assigned at birth.
All right, and then transgender, adjective, describes a person whose gender identity does not match or align with the gender they were assigned at birth. And then non-binary describes a person whose gender identity does not fit into the traditional binary of man or woman. And that term can be abbreviated to, and how do you pronounce that?
NB.
NB.
NB, yeah.
Okay, and explain that.
For transgender people, we are assigned a sex at birth. And when we grow up, when there's a mismatch of how we view ourselves and how society views us, then we can choose to, either medically transition or just socially transition or both.
My name is Matt Walsh, and I've written a book called Johnny the Walrus. This book is about identity and imagination. He identifies as a walrus, And his mom's a little silly. She takes it seriously and thinks he really is a walrus. So she went on her phone, and there are people telling her that this isn't pretend. He's really a walrus. And his mother takes him to the doctor to have him surgically transitioned and gets him walrus hormone pills, and then eventually tries to drop him off at a zoo to live with other walruses. Not only topping the Amazon charts, my book has taken the world by storm.
You're saying that there should be no construct of gender, just sex. You're either male or female.
Right.
And someone feeling in a mental, emotional way that they don't identify with the sex that they have been biologically created as and assigned at birth based on their genitalia. If they don't feel that way, that there's no construct that describes that, experiences that.
Well, that's got nothing to do with the reality. So you can feel however you want. I mean, I could sit here and say that I feel like a tomato plant, but that doesn't mean that I'm actually in those things. So your self-perception, you can have whatever self-perception you want, but you can't expect me to take part in that self-perception or to take part in this kind of charade, this theatrical production. You don't get your own pronouns, just like you don't get your own prepositions or your own adjectives. You know, it's like if I were to tell you, my adjectives are handsome and brilliant, and whenever you're talking about me, you have to describe me as handsome and brilliant because that's how I identify. It makes no sense. You don't get your own pronouns. That's grammar. That's language.
So you think it's a delusion? Someone is self-delusional.
Yeah, I think it's delusion. It could be mental illness. It could be it's a lot of different things. With children,
Wow.
you know, there's also just a basic confusion that all kids have. Like that's why when you hear a parent say, "Oh, my 4-year-old son came to me and said that I'm a girl now, and so that's what I'm gonna raise him as a girl." No, you're a 4-year-old. I have 4 kids. When a 4-year-old boy comes to you and says, "Oh, I'm a girl," here's a good follow-up question. What is a girl? Ask him what he means by that. What do you mean by girl? And when you ask him that, here's what he'll tell you. He will tell you what he really means is that he wants to do some of the things that girls do, like play with the dollhouse, or you know, he likes the color pink. That's fine, play with the dollhouse, but you're still a boy. And that's a question I would like to throw out to other members of the panel, actually, because just like the 4-year-old can't answer what is a girl, well, this is one of the problems with this left-wing gender ideology, is that no one who espouses it can even tell you what these words mean. Like, what is a woman?
Well,
Can you tell me what a woman is?
No, I can't. Because it's not for me to say. Womanhood looks different for everybody.
What do you define a woman as?
An adult human female.
And what does a female mean?
Well,
how
that's
do you define a female?
someone with female reproductive organs,
Okay.
someone who's, here's the thing, when you're female, it goes right down to your bones, your DNA. So that's why if someone dies,
Okay.
we could dig up their bones 100 years from now. We have no idea what they believed in their head, but we can tell what sex they were because it's ingrained in every fiber of their being.
Interesting. So I'm trying to understand. Your definition is that a woman is someone who is female, you said, right?
Correct.
Gotcha.
Is a biological female.
So what happens if we have maybe someone who is female, identifies as a woman, right? You know, cisgender woman, right? As you just explained, maybe doesn't have the ability to reproduce. Maybe doesn't have those organs that you're talking about that are reproductive organs.
I have answered the question. You stood up here and said trans women are women.
Yes.
Tell me what you mean. What is a woman?
Womanhood is something that, just as Ethan explained, I cannot define because I am not
But
myself.
you used the word, so what did you mean when you said trans women are women if you don't know what it means?
Right? So here's the thing. So I do not define what a woman is because I do not identify as a woman. Womanhood is something that is an umbrella term. It includes people
That describes what?
people who identify as a woman.
Identify as what?
As a woman.
What is that?
Was to each their own. Each woman, each man, each person is going to have a different relation with their own gender identity and define it differently.
That doesn't-
And so
I'm not
trans
asking for
women are women too.
Okay.
And you want to hold on.
Just say it again. Trans
You
women
want
are
to
women.
reduce.
What you
listen,
won't even
listen.
tell me
You
what the
wanna
word
reduce,
means, though. So
you
that's
want to
the
reduce
problem.
women. You want to reduce men down to maybe just their genetics, our genitals,
No.
our chromosomes, right? That's what you're
What
saying.
you want to
is
do
that
is
that's what we're not
you
getting
what
today.
you want to do is appropriate women. You want to appropriate womanhood
Okay.
and turn it into basically a costume that can be worn.
I'm really concerned about what's going on in schoolrooms across the country.
The entire gender pronoun situation makes me feel very upset.
People may think that if you don't want to use the preferred pronouns, that you're against gay people. This is 100% untrue. I am a huge advocate for gay people, trans people, and the like.
Stacy and I both have children in the same school district.
I learned that the teachers in my children's school were asking for the kids' preferred pronouns in the classroom. When I heard about this, it was extremely upsetting.
Last year, my son was given a homework assignment. I gave an example of a child not identifying with the gender that they're born with. This is an example of homework that was given to my 8-year-old son. If a student is unsure of their place in the gender spectrum or is experimenting with different forms of gender presentation, school uniforms can present a real challenge.
Oh my gosh. What is gender spectrum?
That's a great question. My son was really confused. I feel like I'm ambushed because now I'm explaining to my son. He asked me, what does sexist mean? As a parent, I felt trapped. I felt I had to explain these concepts to my son. I felt like I was whittling away his innocence. This year, my 12-year-old daughter had a science teacher ask the class about their preferred gender pronouns.
I don't want a teacher talking to my child about gender pronouns. It is not appropriate. It's crossing a line. It's unacceptable. This is a parent-child issue, not a teacher-child issue. I wanted my kids to have nothing to do with it. I had to pull both of my kids out of this school district.
I've decided not to pull my children out of the school district, but I'm fighting for change. I've been attending school board meetings for about a year now. What's happening across the country is teachers could get fired if they use the wrong gender pronoun. That just seems wrong.
This is my mission in life, to protect my children, and however I need to do that, I will. What Matt and I and a group of us are doing is we're working to have the school board removed completely. A lot of people I know, a lot of parents I know, are afraid to speak up, and I speak for them, and I'm not afraid.
Arlo, how old is the baby now?
Oh, Sparrow's actually going to be 4 in February.
Has Sparrow decided as...
Oh, a gender?
Yes.
Oh, that's a great question. Sparrow is in a point of learning and exploration with a lot of things, including gender. Language with children at 4 is very, they're figuring it out. And so currently, Sparrow uses he for everyone. No, it doesn't matter what their pronouns are, and we've mentioned it. They just call everyone he, they don't conjugate it correctly. They don't use him or his or anything. Just he for everything. So we joke that he is Sparrow's preferred pronoun because that's what they use for everyone. As far as for themselves, though, they're not coming consistently saying, I would like, I want to be a boy or a girl, or I feel like I'm non-binary. We don't have heavy, in-depth, overt communications. It's not like every morning I wake them up and say, all right, what's your gender today, hoping they'll finally give me an answer. So it doesn't come up like that.
Okay, you decided this was important to leave unspecified, undetermined. Why?
Because of the fact that gender is so social, and it is such a social construct. Now, we say we shouldn't interact with one another differently because of our genders. Everyone deserves the same respect and treatment. But it has been scientifically proven that children are interacted with very differently based on whether they are assumed to be a boy or a girl. Girl children are held more, boy children are given, mechanical toys more often, all of these kind of examples and anecdotes. And I felt it was important for Sparrow to get the chance to figure themselves out without all of that pressure, intervention, and programming.
It seems like we should just keep the dialogue going and hopefully find some middle ground.
I have a question. Arlo, you mentioned that you don't have your child discussing pronouns or figuring out their pronouns yet, and yet in school, our kids are being asked what their pronoun is. I'm confused about how that works, and then there's always this fluidity right around what pronoun you are each day, so it's constantly changing. How confusing.
I think
For
what it
kids.
is, I think what it is that I sympathize with the hurt and distress that I sense from you all. I also wouldn't want my child to learn things from their teachers at school that were topics I was uncomfortable with or I didn't know how I'd want to talk about them. Your children are going to need to know how to navigate a world in which non-binary and transgender people exist.
This is a great conversation to have at home, out of the school. This should not be part of the curriculum.
We're out of time, but I thank everyone for your thoughts and ideas and for remaining civil about the conversation.
The dispute over gender pronouns.
I don't identify exclusively with being a man or a woman. I use they and them as my pronouns.
You don't get your own pronouns.
You think it's a delusion.
In school, our kids are being asked what their pronoun is.
This is a war on gender.
New Dr. Phil. Check your local listings.
Do you have a story or a question for me? Click the link in the description and tell me what in the world is going on.